Coming up in this radical episode of 1914 Excelsior, I flap my hands around like a crazed maniac. All right, let's take this bad boy apart and see what it looks like on the inside. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you all the bits and pieces that make up an Eclipse countershaft chain drive clutch mechanism. To kind of briefly walk you through how this whole thing works here, in the simplest form, we have the small sprocket that's off the crankshaft on the engine is continually driving this larger sprocket on the body of the clutch pack. When you engage the clutch, pressure from this pressure plate that comes from these springs collapses the drive and driven plates together, which then transfers all that power to the innermost hub, which is connected directly to the smaller sprocket that is inboard on the clutch pack, and then that transfers power via the chain to the rear hub on the rear wheel. It's very much like a modern day motorcycle clutch, just slightly more primitive, but very familiar. If you know about that kind of stuff, these parts are going to somewhat look familiar. So there you have it. There are kind of the basics of this clutch system. All right, to walk you through again some of the stuff that we may or may not be able to address. Some things we can. Some things I'm still thinking about. The inner hub or the driven hub, the bearing races for these bearings here, this one on the inside and this one here on the back side, the races are worn terribly. That's where a lot of the growling was occurring when I was spinning the quill. So that's where that's happening. The ball bearings probably have been replaced at one point, and they all look good. So we have that issue here, and then we also have these bushings, which are on the center shaft or quill for the entire clutch pack. This is where a lot of that play is coming from the crank pedal assembly. I initially thought it was the other two bushings that I showed you earlier. It is not. Those bushings are simply taking up end float. So we have to remake these two bushings. That will, firm things up there. So that's the other thing. Otherwise, I think we're in pretty good shape. Everything looks pretty much usable. So I think we should get on with this and see what we can do with these bushings first and foremost. All right, just to talk a little bit further about these bad bearing races in the center hub or driven hub of the clutch assembly. The bearing races, this is all machined as one piece. So they are not pressed in bearing races. So that kind of limits what we can do as far as repairing. But if I show you with my flashlight, you can see some of the damage that has occurred over the last 110 years here. So that's the issue. So the ball bearings are, falling in those small potholes, and they're catching them, and that's the growling that I'm hearing. So not sure if we can do anything with this yet. I'm still thinking about it. But anyway, just to further explain that in a little more detail. Radio. So before I start to make the replacement bushings in our center shaft or quill for our clutch pack, I think I need to take a step back and just confirm this portion, the center shaft of this end of the pedal crank assembly, has been repaired. And what I need to make sure is that this is running reasonably straight and true, because that'll determine how accurate I can make my new bushings, for this. So first thing I'm going to do is, this is also the half that's got that pedal that the threads must have been stripped and it was welded. I'm going to get rid of this pedal. I'm going to take this off here so it's just a little easier to work with. So I think what I need to do is just grind off this weld and then see if I can get this pedal off here first and foremost. All right, so I've got the pedal removed from where it was welded onto this half of the crank assembly, and the threads they're just gone. They're absolutely gone. And I can also tell you that the shaft for this pedal on this end is, I took the pedal apart and it's absolutely destroyed on both ends actually. So we got some work to do there. Anyway, so back to the problem at hand. So this is the repair that was made to the center shaft of our crank pedal assembly. And what I want to do is make sure that this indeed runs true. But before I can do that, I am looking at this weld that was done here at one point, and you can see right now the weld is proud of the two areas where the bushings should ride. So what I got to do first is grind off enough of that weld that then I can check concentricity between these two ends and see how close we are. So I'm going to take care of that, and then we'll come back and we'll take a look. All right, I have the pedal crankshaft assembly loosely mounted to my welding table, and just to check to see if this portion, the center shaft, is running straight and true. And using my Starrett rule, you can see there it is not. In that plane, that's the worst of it. And let me change camera angles here so I can show you in another plane where it's running a little better. All right, so here it's kind of hard to see, but it's actually it's pretty darn close this way. So we're not really twisted as much as we're actually bent this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in the hydraulic press right where this was made. You can kind of tell that this is the peak of the arc, and I'm going to just see if I can just press on this just enough to get this to run, a little truer this direction, because here it looks pretty good. So let's see what I can come up with here. All right, so I put the pedal crankshaft assembly in my hydraulic press. I pressed on it right here because the center shaft was kind of bent like this direction. And believe it or not, I bent this thing just past its point of elasticity, and I got that on the first crack. So I'm going to call that good. I'm going to call that really good. Yes. Alrighty, now that we've got our shaft here on our crank pedal assembly running somewhat true, now I think it's time to get on with making our bushings for the center shaft or the quill to our Eclipse countershaft chain drive clutch. These are the two old bushings, so we're going to be making new bushings for either end of this. My plan is to make these bushings to fit these two ends of the center shaft here of the pedal crank assembly. Once they're in place, in situ, I will then hone them so this shaft will pass through comfortably. This is obviously not perfectly straight and true, but I think the best bet is to get everything in place and then hone what we need to out of these bushings to then accept this shaft. I have received my beautiful piece of bearing bronze from McMaster Carr. Everybody loves McMaster Carr. I have to tell you that I am not sponsored in any way by McMaster Carr. I should be sponsored by McMaster Carr. I'm not affiliated in any means with them. I should definitely be affiliated with them. And we're not friends. We should definitely be best friends. But anyway, so I've received that from McMaster Carr. This stuff comes like lickety split. It's like I order it one day and it's here the next. It's amazing. So I say let's get on with making these new bushings.
Oh, just like the super funk band Midnight Star said in their 1983 breakout hit, no parking, baby. No parking on the dance floor. Because it's time for a machining montage.
Okay, I thought I'd just take an extra minute or two here and just go into a little more detail on how a clutch like this transfers power from the engine to the rear wheel. It's a very simple but very elegant way to do it. So, and I know some people may not be familiar with this, so I thought I'd just take a couple minutes here and explain it. So we've got a few items here. We've got our clutch discs, both the drive and driven, and we also have our outer or main hub, and then the inner driven hub of our clutch pack. So as you can see, we have two different types of clutch plates. We have the drive plate, which has teeth on the outer circumference of it, and those teeth engage only with the outer or main body hub, not the driven hub. And then we have our driven discs, which have teeth on the inner circumference, and it only engages with the driven hub and spins freely on the outer body. So how this works is when we disengage the clutch, we basically allow some distance between all these plates. We take away the pressure that the pressure plate and clutch springs put on all these plates. And what happens is they're allowed to move freely without non-synchronous, I should say. So the driven plates and the drive plates can kind of do their own thing. Now, when we engage the clutch, pressure from the pressure plate and springs slams all these clutch plates together tightly, creating a lot of friction. And what it basically does is turns all these clutch plates into a single gear, making both the outer and inner hub to drive in synchronous. So that's kind of how it works. I probably just completely made everyone crazy with that explanation, but it's a very simple process, and hopefully that helps people just a little bit understand how this works. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode of 1914 Excelsior, but on the next episode, we're going to repair the left-handed threads on this half of our pedal crankshaft assembly. We're also going to remake the center shafts for both of our pedals. So that should make for some viewing pleasure, so shelter in place. And thanks for following along to this point, and we'll see you next time on 1914 Excelsior.